Welcome to this explainer. You know, when we picture the ancient Greek gods today, we usually think of majestic marble statues, epic battles, and heroic tales. But what if I told you that these stories actually represent one of the most monumental revolutions in the entire history of human thought? It's true. Today, we're going to dive right in and retrace a truly fascinating journey, the exact moment humanity stopped cowering in the dark and decided to put itself right at the center of the universe.
So, picture this. Before the Greeks came along, early humanity lived in a world absolutely dominated by paralyzing fear. It's a pretty common misconception that primitive humans lived in this romantic, delightful harmony with nature, seeing beautiful nymphs dancing in the woods. But as our source material points out, nothing could be further from the truth. Horrors lurked in the primeval forest, not nymphs and naiads. To just survive the night, early humans relied on senseless but powerful magic, and horrifyingly enough, human sacrifice, all just to appease the incomprehensible, terrifying divinities lurking in the shadows. And honestly, this transition is basically the biggest plot twist in human history. In the primeval world, mankind was up against pure terror, irrational magic, and these incomprehensible beast gods. But then, the Greek world emerges. Suddenly, out of nowhere, we have human-shaped gods. We have beauty. The terrifying, unpredictable unknown is completely replaced by a companionable heaven and a rational universe. The Greeks literally transformed a world full of fear into a world full of beauty. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We'll start with the Greek miracle, then meet the scribes of the myths. After that, we're tracing the power shift from Titans to Olympians, mapping out the divine family, and finally, looking at the evolution of gods.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the Greek miracle.
The absolute crucial turning point in human history comes down to this one simple idea. The Greeks made their gods in their own image. Before this moment, that idea had literally never entered the mind of man. Until Greece awakened, human beings counted for very, very little in the grand scheme of things. But with the rise of Greece, mankind actually became the center of the universe. They were suddenly the most important thing in it. They looked around at the visible world, saw the beauty of strong, swift human bodies, and decided, yeah, our god should look exactly like that.
To really get how wild and revolutionary this was, you just have to look at the divinities that came before them. Over in Egypt, gods were depicted as these immobile, towering stone colossuses deliberately made unhuman, or as rigid figures with cat heads that just screamed inflexible cruelty. And in Mesopotamia, the artists there were busy creating literal nightmare fuel, beastmen with bird heads or lions with bull heads and eagle wings. I mean, these were unreal, monstrous creations designed specifically to evoke inhuman cruelty and paralyzing fear. Laughter in the presence of an Assyrian bird beast? Absolutely inconceivable.
But the Greek approach completely flipped that dynamic on its head. Human gods made heaven a pleasantly familiar place. Because the gods looked and acted human, the Greeks knew exactly what they were up to up there. They banqueted, they drank nectar, they loved, they were actually relatable. Honestly, they acted like characters in a modern sitcom. You had Zeus as the cheating husband, constantly trying to hide his affairs, inevitably getting caught and looking like a total fool, while Hera played the role of the ingeniously jealous wife. This made the heavens companionable. For the first time, you could actually laugh at the divine.
Moving right along to Section 2, Scribes of the Myths.
Now we have to remember, these stories span well over a millennium, and they are not primitive cave drawings. These are the highly polished creations of brilliant poets. It all kicks off around 1000 BC with Homer and the Iliad, which gives us the oldest Greek literature. Then jump to the 8th century BC with Hesiod, a poor farmer who is actually the first to wonder how the universe was created. By the 6th century, we get Pindar, the greatest lyric poet, and then we move down through the legendary tragic poets of the 5th century, all the way to Roman-era satirists like Apuleius and Lucian in the 2nd century AD.
Okay, Section 3, Titans to Olympians.
This concept is going to fundamentally flip what a lot of us assume today. When we think of gods, we usually think of them as the creators of the universe, right? But for the Greeks, it was the exact opposite. The universe created the gods. Heaven and earth were formed first. They were the original parents. They gave birth to the Titans, and then the Titans gave birth to the gods.
So before Zeus and the famous Olympians took over, the universe was ruled by the Titans, the elder gods. And these beings were of enormous size and incredible strength. Kronos was the supreme ruler, while until his son Zeus dethroned him. We also have Ocean, the literal river encircling the earth. Hyperion, father of the sun, moon, and dawn, Mnemosyne, who represented memory, and Iapetus. Now, Iapetus is super crucial because he's the father of Atlas, the guy who bore the world on his shoulders, and Prometheus, the savior of mankind. Now, when Zeus took over, these massive elder gods didn't just vanish. They were cast down and forced to take a lower place in the cosmos.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Divine Family.
It's wild to see how power and lineage flowed from a single, distinct point. Starting right at the very top with Uranus and Gaia, heaven and earth, you can trace the descendants down through the Titans, straight down to the 12 great Olympians, including heavyweights like Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, and Hades. It reveals just how incredibly interconnected this divine family truly was, ruling everything from a cloud-gated realm of perfect peace. We definitely don't have time to cover all 12 today, but if we look at the core group, it's fascinating how they divided up reality. Notice how the Greeks and Romans used different names. Zeus became Jupiter, Poseidon became Neptune. But the key takeaway here is their domains. They literally partitioned the universe. Zeus grabbed the sky, rain, and thunder. Poseidon claimed the sea, storms, and earthquakes. Hades ruled the underworld and the dead. Meanwhile, Athena watched over the city, handicrafts, and wisdom. And Apollo stepped up as the god of light, truth, music, and healing.
When the three main brothers drew lots for their share of the universe, Zeus won the ultimate jackpot. He became the supreme lord of the sky, the cloud gatherer, who wielded the awful thunderbolt. His power was genuinely greater than that of all the other divinities combined. In fact, he once boasted in the Iliad that if all the gods and goddesses tried to drag him down from heaven with a golden rope, they couldn't do it, but he could drag them all up, along with the earth and the sea.
Those drawn lots are perfectly symbolized by their iconic weapons. On one hand, you have Poseidon wielding his earth-shaking trident, capable of summoning roaring storms and shattering anything he pleased. And right beside that raw power, you have Zeus's devastating thunderbolt. These weapons are the ultimate visual symbols of their domains. Poseidon ruled the seafarers of Greece down below, while Zeus governed the boundless sky above them.
But you know what's really fascinating about all of this? The raw humanity of these beings. Despite their immense, godlike power, they harbored some incredibly deep, petty flaws. Look at Aphrodite, the foam-rising goddess of beauty. Without her, there is no joy. But in the stories, she is often treacherous and malicious, wielding this destructive power over men. Or Hera, the venerated protector of marriage, who is somehow also implacably angry and vindictive. Or Hades, the inexorable king of the dead with his magic invisibility cap, ruling justly but completely mercilessly. They were absolutely glorious, yet remarkably flawed.
And this dual nature highlights a massive tension between their beautiful, poetic ideals and their crude, primitive origins. Take Apollo, for instance. He is the god of light, truth, and healing. No false word ever falls from his lips, yet earlier tales show his pitiless, cruel, primitive roots. Then look at his sister, Artemis. She's the lovely protectress of youth and the moon. But, in a startling contradiction, she is also fierce, revengeful, and, in the old days, actually demanded human sacrifice. You can literally see the Greeks slowly writing their way out of their own savage past.
And finally, Section 5, the Evolution of Gods. Here's the thing you've got to remember. To these people, a real myth wasn't simply religion, it was early science. It was their way of explaining the inexplicable in nature. If lightning struck, well, that was Zeus hurling a thunderbolt. If a volcano erupted, there obviously must be a terrible monster imprisoned inside the mountain, struggling to get free. But it was also early literature, for pure entertainment, stories told around the fire on a long winter's evening that had absolutely no connection to nature at all.
And as human needs matured over the centuries, their gods had to change with them. We can actually chart the evolution of Zeus in 3 distinct phases. First, he starts out as a primitive rain god, which makes perfect sense because rocky Greece needed rain more than anything else. Second, he morphs into the amorous, trickster chieftain of early stories who always sides with the strong. But eventually, the peasant farmers realized that the poor needed a just god, so Zeus evolved into his third phase. He became the universal father, the protector of the weak and helpless, with justice sitting right beside his throne.
So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. The ancient Greeks completely flipped the script. The universe created their gods, and then mankind shaped those gods to reflect their own human ideals, their flaws, and their evolving need for justice. It was a mirror reflecting themselves. So my question to you is, how are our modern stories continuing to reshape the divine in our own image today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.